So let's just get right into it. Let's start off. You went to University of Southern Alabama.
For my
Let's
graduate degree. Yeah.
do a graduate degree. And so did it kind of start there? Did the writing bug start there?
I've always written.
Uh-huh.
That's like, you know how some people have something they just do their whole lives and then maybe they have other jobs or whatever, but there's just something they do their whole writing is the thing I've done my whole life. Everything else I've done for a chunk of time or starting at a certain age or whatever, but writing, I don't remember not writing. Like I don't have a memory of not wanting to be a storyteller in that way. And many of the things that have happened since then have been just other ways of storytelling, whether that's being an actor, a director, a filmmaker, a teacher. Those are all different ways of storytelling. But yeah, writing is my first love. And so when I was 11 years old, I moved to a what you'd probably call a commune, but it was actually technically it was a collective because a commune you pool your money, and a collective you keep your money separate,
Uh-huh.
um, and you just pay the bills as a group.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I grew up for a year and a half in this collective in the 70s,
Uh-huh.
and I knew the whole time I was there that I was having this very unique and rare childhood.
Okay.
And so I realized at 11 years old that I was going to write the story of that.
Oh.
And yeah, and so then when I graduated from college at University of Maryland,
Mm-hmm.
I had an English degree, but I didn't, I hadn't been educated as an author. I certainly wrote papers all the time, but I was like, I want to get an education as an author. And so I wanted to get my master's degree in creative writing so that I could earn the right to be the one to tell the story of Lemonade Farm. So, and I'm glad I did that. I think there was a lot. Ultimately, I ended up having to learn a lot more. I just wrote a book called Writing Unblocked, how I went from writing one book in 20 years to 5 books in 4 years. The one book in 20 years was Lemonade Farm. So,
Wow.
yeah, so even with that education, I still hadn't really figured out how to write a book. They don't really teach you how to write a book. They teach you how to write great sentences and great stories but they didn't really teach you how to like make a book. And so that I learned other ways. And yeah, and now I'm teaching that because now that I know, I've never been religious about, I've never felt the need to say, oh, I can save you, I can save you. But
Mm-hmm.
with the Writing Unblocked process, I have what I call the 3-step prep. I do feel like I can save you. I can save you like 19 of those 20 years that I spent writing that book.
I'm sure. I'm sure. And I've taken, of course, not to your degree, but several literature classes. And even when I wrote a book, it was hard for me to even come up with the first paragraph.
Right. Because nobody teaches you. They teach you how to craft that paragraph once you've written
Mhm.
it. They teach you whether you should cut part of it or, change the sentence structures. They teach you about better word choices and being specific
Mhm.
and all that. But they don't teach you like how do you go from this idea in your head, whether it's a how-to book or whether it's a novel or whether you're adapting a screenplay into a novel or a novel into a screenplay or you're ghostwriting for somebody else and they've handed you a stack of journals or whatever your writing journey is.
Mhm.
They don't tell you how to do that part.
No, they don't. You're absolutely right. They would always say, I remember first it was write the way you speak. But if you don't speak correctly, then you can't write correctly. Then it was, well, you should know the parts of a sentence. Then it was, you should know the parts of a paragraph. But you're right. They never taught how to formulate a body of work.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
I figured that out, trial by error. and
yeah.
and now I feel like I can save people. Like I figured it out. And I'm writing a book right now that if I didn't have my method, I swear I would be putting my head through a wall right now. But because of my 3-step prep, I'm just hard at work. I'm just getting it done and it's happening.
Yes. And now I know like you're going to be, of course, teaching my daughter about acting, which I'm like so excited about. And so I always tell her, I said, make sure that you know how to write. And if there's different writing forms, if you will, like creative writing. And see, I've never done like creative writing. And I told her
Mhm.
that mine has been scholarly writing, which is different. And
Right.
it's really difficult because if I need to explain something to someone, it's different, and it's hard for sometimes people to understand. I said, but make sure you pay attention to that. Make sure you do.
Well,
It's
yeah, it's one of those things that, like having a business degree, it's one of those things where you'll never regret knowing how to do that, you know?
You're right. You won't regret. And then I like the part where you talk about storytelling. And I've been in different conversations. Let's just say you don't even have to be an actor, right? But you could just have a conversation with someone. And during that conversation, I always hear, tell me a great story, or they want to hear a story because
Yeah.
they're imagining it. And I have been around great storytellers and I love it because I can actually picture myself where they're talking about, I
Right.
put myself in the scene.
Right. It's a way of me inviting you into the movie in my head, you know? Like, how else are you supposed to see the story in my head if I can't articulate it somehow and make it available to you outside of my head? So, yeah, that skill set, no matter how you do it, whether you do it through writing, acting, directing, whatever, however you do it, that skill set is so important. Even just like in friendships, it's important to be able to explain what's in your head.
Yes, you're exactly right. Because then people will be saying, what are you talking about? I don't understand. Can you explain that further? They're always saying that. Wow.
Well,
So,
I today earlier I went to City Hall and spoke in front of the city council for I had 2 minutes, and I'd never done it before. So I was nervous. I know people must assume that if you're an actor, you're good at public speaking. They're two totally different things. So I was nervous as a public speaker, and I knew that I'm there to persuade them to listen to my point of view and be persuaded to do what I want done for our city. And so I did my 3-step prep. I created a thing that was going to be this little 2-minute, like, here's my story, here's why you should care about my point of view and why it is that I think you should save this landmark. So yeah, it's not a landmark, it's a building that they were talking about changing the building. And it's a building that's actually featured in the first of my mystery books. And
wow.
so I went there to speak as an author who had been inspired by that building and was like, don't don't change that building. It inspires artists, you know.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So fast forward. When did the acting part uh, get introduced?
Well, that's an unusual thing for me because most people who act, they start very young. They know very young that that's something they want to do. They do it in school. Um, like theater kids, and
Mhm.
I was not one of them. I did one play in high school,
Mhm.
and that's it. That's the whole list. And I didn't do it at my school. I did it with a city theater company called Teens on Stage.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so it was Godspell. It was a musical. And that was it. That was my whole entire, list of acting. But I was becoming somebody who was out in the world. At 17 I ended up in a beauty pageant, and then that sort in South America. and
Now
and
that's
then
interesting.
yeah, and then that turned into me starting to model and do other pageants. And so and then at 18, almost 19, I got a job as a disc jockey at a nightclub in DC, in Georgetown. So that's, a public entertainer. You're the center of attention and they're all dancing or not dancing at your instruction. And so, as a teenager, I did start to do things that were in the public eye, but I didn't, I didn't even know, honestly,
Mhm.
until I was much older, I didn't understand that the people on TV were making a check. I mean, I don't know. When you're a kid, do you think about whether or not people are getting paid?
Not really.
Yeah. So I didn't know that was a job. Everybody I knew worked for the government or the military or whatever, so I didn't even know that was a job.
Wow. So when did
So
you?
I was 25
Mhm.
when I first figured out that I was going to become an actor, and I was 31 when I did my first film.
Really? And what was that?
It was the sequel to Terms of Endearment.
Really?
Yes, and it was called The Evening Star. And yeah, so I got my first movie. I got to work with Shirley MacLaine, which changed everything because I had been studying for 5 years, but I learned more in a week of working with her than, I mean, she is a national treasure.
Wow. Now, working with Shirley MacLaine, how was that? Like, you go in and you audition, I'm assuming, and you get it. What was the first day like?
I didn't get it. I went in and I auditioned. Okay, so Richard Dreyfuss, who has an Academy Award, he was, he's a pretty phenomenal actor.
Pretty big deal.
So he gave me the advice before I went in. He said, make it so they can't sleep. Make it so they can't sleep at night thinking of ways to put you in their movie. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to do that. I mean, I'm just starting out. I didn't, that just sounded like awfully Zen-like advice. Cause like, how are you going to make them not sleep at night? Like, I don't know. And I thought, well, maybe that advice is for movie stars. Like maybe that's not for me, but I tried. And so all I could figure out to do was just prepare myself until I was so prepared that it was, nothing could throw me.
Wow.
And so that's what I did. And I went and auditioned and I got a call back. And I made the casting director cry. And so I got the call back and I go to the callback and the writer director is there. And he had written Soap Dish, which I thought was hilarious. But he had also written Steel Magnolias, which for, a Southern, like my family knows every word of
Oh yeah, you have to.
named for that movie, like,
Yes.
so I really wanted him to like me. I did a good job. And he figured out how prepared I was. And he started playing with me. He started asking me to do things different ways just to see if I could. Like, now do the whole thing angry. Now do the whole thing with an accent. Now do the whole thing. Like, he was having so much fun. So I left there like, I got this. I totally got this role. And I didn't get it. And they started shooting the movie. Like, I really couldn't believe I didn't get it. I really couldn't wrap my head. I kept saying, no, I got that part. I got that. And my agent's like, you're nobody and you did not get that part. Like you did not get that part. Yeah. She was like, you didn't get it. Just adjust your worldview. You did not get the part. And I'm like, no, I did. I got that part. But she's like, you're new. You don't know anything. So the director calls from Texas. They're a few weeks into shooting. He can't sleep at night thinking of ways to put me in the movie. These are his words.
So Richard
called because he could not sleep at night. So he wrote a part for me. And so I was 31 years old and he wrote a part for me. He didn't know, he just knew what I looked like. And so he wrote a part for me to play a 19-year-old actor playing a 17-year-old on a TV show with Juliette Lewis as my co-star. And we're playing Catholic schoolgirls. And so we're high school students. And the scene, I did 5 scenes, but the only one that's still in the movie is I'm dressed as the Good Witch Glinda and Juliette Lewis is dressed as an angel because it's Halloween. But yeah, so that started my career. Was I made it so he couldn't sleep at night thinking of ways to put me in his movie.
Wow. But you know what? I think actually that statement is so profound because it actually can be used in different scenarios. Yeah, for everything.
Yeah. I wrote this book, No Small Parts, An Actor's Guide to Turning Minutes into Moments and Moments into a Career with Foreword by Richard Dreyfuss. and endorsements from Kevin Costner, Reginald Hudlin, Lou Diamond Phillips. And, that is sort of at the base of it, is this idea that this is all for actors and it's all very specifically for actors. But I've had several people tell me over the years that it's actually really about self-starting. It's about entrepreneurship. It's about owning your journey and making it so that you're not the reason people say no.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, there's stuff you can't control that makes people say no, but don't add to it.
Right, right. And I was saying earlier, I was like, I'm getting all of the books because I'm sure there's going to be something else in there, and I always find that it doesn't matter. So you're an actor, right? But I'm not. Of course, my daughter wants to be, but it's always something that leaves you with, like that leaves you with something. And
Yeah.
I just know that those books are. And I tell my daughter all the time, like, you know what? Just read things that you may not even know if you have an interest in it. But just read it. I'm
Right.
going to walk away with something.
With something. Yeah. No, it's true. And that's because all of us have a story to tell. All of us have a lesson to teach. All of us have something to offer. Even people that you can't stand have something to offer you.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So fast forward. So then oh my gosh, like, first of all, I didn't even know you have done so many movie shows. Like,
No, since the 90s. I've been doing that for a long time. I was in Friends. I was in Jag. I was in like Nash Bridges, stuff that's been like gone forever. I've been on. So.
But we were talking earlier about just different terms. We're going to bring that up, but we were just talking about different terms that are now considered taboo versus before. And when you think about those shows, especially like Friends and all of those, right? They were like they set the foundation for a lot of things that we're actually going through now. It's almost like they had the foresight, and we didn't know it at the time. For us, it was just normal, but they touched on some pretty heavy topics. I loved it. And I think they need to bring back those shows.
They did. And well, young people love that show. And the only thing that hasn't aged well, and it didn't age well while they were shooting it. Like while they were shooting it, there was critiques of this and they brought in Aisha Tyler to try and help it. But they're like New York Friends and they're all white. That was the only critique where, that doesn't age great. And it didn't make sense even at the time. In the mid 90s in New York, why would it be all, you know what I mean? Like I lived in New York from 89 to 92. Definitely, my friends definitely were more colorful, like.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like you can go through, I don't know, about 10 different countries in a day.
Yeah, because New York is so, and well, now it's become more gentrified, but at the time it was so diverse, and there was so many neighborhoods that were like their own little world, like whether it's Chinatown or whatever. There's these all little this, little that. But it's not just that. It's that I was going to an acting school at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. That was an extremely diverse environment of people who all were just creatives who wanted to learn. One of my best friends that I met, he's one of my best friends today, but I met him back in 89 at the American Academy, is a guy named Jannard Burks, who y'all would know as Mike Tyson's bodyguard in The Hangover. So he's played in a bunch of stuff, but he and I were there for the same reason. We're there to do the same thing. We're on the same journey, and we come from two very different backgrounds. So that's very common in the arts.
Yes. Well, first of all,
and it's common in New York.
Yes. I like Hangover 1, 2, and 3. I love that.
You're a devotee.
I love The Hangover. Oh my gosh, I do. Well,
and he was in Devil in a Blue Dress. He was in The Preacher's Wife. He's been in a bunch of stuff. You should look him up. But in any case, my point is that that show was such a great and important show. And you're right, they were ahead of their time on, Ross's ex-wife turns out to be a lesbian. Like that. I mean, there's all sorts of things that they go into about having babies or not being able to have babies. There's even stuff on there about being twins. There's all sorts of things that are in that show that are sort of you know, inclusive in their way. But yeah, they did leave a big chunk on the table that they could have explored.
Yeah, and now it's like I said, now it's still relevant. My daughter thinks that even those actors, she thinks they're like her age and all that stuff is new. No, no. She told me the
No,
other day,
we're all like pushing 60 now.
yeah. She's like, Mom, like New Kids on the Block. She wanted to go see them in concert, right? She's like, oh, mine's a new group coming out. I was like, they ain't new. I was like, they're not new. They just look great for their age, but they
Right.
ain't new. You know?
Right.
I was like, no, they're not new. But it's so funny because a lot of that stuff is pertinent. But I said, you can tell the differences of the time. I said, look at their hair. Everyone had like a lot of hairspray, and also we didn't know what high definition was.
Right. No, of course not.
We didn't know that. But everything was more family oriented. You ate together and everything.
Yes. Well, that's true. And I come from a family where eating together is an important thing. Now, I do eat in front of the TV, but eating together is an important thing.
Yes, absolutely. So, wow. So we're going to go through the period. So how did you get on the Django? Like, did Quentin Tarantino call you and say, hey, Laura, I have a part for you? Like,
I wish it had been that easy. No, of course not. We had done Kill Bill together. And then I was in a movie that he produced called Daltrey Calhoun. And in between there, I directed a movie that I wrote, a short film that I wrote, and he lent me his camera for that. And then wait, there's one more.
How do you?
And then Hellride. I produced a movie with Quentin called Hellride.
Oh.
And then Django, by the time he writes Django, I had read every script from Kill Bill on to Django. He has a group of friends that like read his scripts and give him notes and feedback and all that. And so I had done that since Kill Bill. So when I got the script for Django, I was a little surprised because I had moved away from LA. And so I was a little surprised that he was still including me in the group, even though I couldn't go to his house and give him notes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I still was just like, oh, how nice of him. He mailed me a copy of the script so I can give him notes. But he didn't mention anything. There's no note with it. He just sent me a copy of the script. So I'm reading it. It's very long. And so I get to page 92, which in a regular script could be the last page. But this one, it's still got another half a script to go. And so I get to page, I think it was 92. And it says something like, now my name is Laura Lynn Cayuette. And it says, Laura Lee Candy Fitzwillie, a tall, strawberry blonde, attractive, Southern, 40-ish Southern belle. And I was like, whoa. What? What? So I reread it like, I don't know, 15 times going, tall, yeah, that's me. Strawberry blonde, yeah, that's me. 40-ish, yeah, that's me. Like I'm going, is this me?
Uh-huh.
But I didn't want to presume, and I thought, well, even if it's not for me,
mm-hmm.
I clearly have influenced this. There's clearly now a character that he wrote that I influenced. So even if they cast Nicole Kidman to play it, I'll know that it was me, So I didn't want to say anything that would make it sound like I just assumed it was for me. So I didn't mention it. I gave him all my notes and I didn't mention, it being for me. I didn't ask. And so I gave him all the notes and that was it. And then literally months go by, like 4 or 5 months go by. Mm-hmm. And he calls and he says they're coming to do location scouting here in New Orleans. So will I meet them for dinner? So, okay. So I go to dinner and I get there early. I get there on time, but they're late because they're coming from a location. And I am sitting at the table and it's like, there's like seats for like 8 or 10 people at the table. So I'm like, wow, I wonder who all is going to be here. When they arrive, they come in. Reggie Hudlin, I knew personally. We met at a concert years before. We've been friends ever since. He comes in the door.
Wow.
Jim Scotchable, who I knew from, he had directed the second unit when he was producing Enemy of the State. So he directed me in one of my first movies when we did the second unit stuff that Tony didn't direct, Tony Scott. So he walks in the door and I'm like, okay. And that, like, everybody that comes in the door, they're all people I know who know me and know my work and have worked with me and like me, or they're friends of mine. And so I was like, if I don't get this part, it will be weird. Like, strange that I don't get this part. But at dinner, I didn't bring it up. Nobody talked about it. Never got mentioned. And then later, I'm telling you, then later still, I get a call from Quentin saying, okay, I want you to come and read for the part. So now I'm going to get to audition. Now, by then, you know, they're doing more scouting. They're doing more production work. So I go and read with Quentin, and we had a meeting where I just talked about my take on things. And then we read some of the scenes together. And then I still didn't hear for a while.
So this is like almost a year.
It went on for about 8 months. I mean, it went on for like about 8 months before I finally got the part. But I had the script the whole time. So, you know, I was able to, I didn't want to get too deep into it because, you know, I didn't want to break my own heart. But I did look at it. I didn't just let the script sit there. I did read it a few times. I did think, what would I do with Laura, way before I had the meeting. Yeah. And then when I had the meeting, I was very prepared. So it would have been hard to beat me. But the studio wanted Lady Gaga. The studio wanted all these people that were totally inappropriate for the part.
No, I can't see. I can't even see Nicole Kidman.
Well, no, Nicole was never up for the part, but Lady Gaga was. I'm just joking because people say that she looks like me.
Yeah, but you know, no, I can't even see.
I'm tall, strawberry blonde, whatever that whole list.
I can't even see Gaga for it.
No, she would be totally. Are you kidding me? To play a Southern belle?
Yeah, no. She is no. She does a lot of philanthropy. She's a phenomenal person. But
yes, she's incredibly talented.
But I can't see that Southern belle with her. Not at all.
Right. I'm gonna let her sing. She let me do the Southern belle.
Yeah. No, I can't see Southern belle.
No. Wow. No, and neither could Quentin. And so that was the end of it.
I don't even know why it took him 8 months. I mean, I don't know the process, but 8 months, I'm like, come on now. He knew you were good for that role.
I don't know. But it was a good time when I got the call. When I did finally get the call, that was a good day.
Wow. So how did they call you? He's like, hey, Laura.
He didn't call me. My agent did.
Really?
Yeah, my agent called and told me I got the part. Honestly, I think I honestly think that he gave her that he gave her that moment, because she was I had moved here in 2009. I signed with her in 2010. And so, you know, like, I think this was 2011 when this whole thing started. So I think he like gave her that moment.
Yeah, that's, that's very thoughtful.
Well, I have no idea. He might have just been too busy. Who knows? I have no idea.
So. Right. Because he could have called you and told you. Well, let me ask you a question. I know, like, my daughter's like, Mom, like, you really, like, you go too deep with stuff. He loaned you his camera. How do you call and ask Quentin Tarantino, hey, can I borrow your camera? Does it work?
You know what? It went the other way. He offered me the camera because it was his fault that the whole thing was happening. I had given him a script I wrote. I wrote a bunch of scripts, and I gave him the script I wrote. He read it and said, now you do realize you're going to have to direct this, right? And I said, well, I pride myself on being the only actor who doesn't want to direct. And he was like, yeah, that's really cute, but you're going to have to direct this. So I thought, well, I don't know anything about directing, so I need to learn how to do that before I try and direct a movie. And so when I said, oh, I'm doing this short film, and I had gotten Joanna Cassidy and Danica McKellar and Julie Brown signed on, and I had a lot of things going for me. I had the DP from second unit of Titanic. I had, like I had a lot. I had Brett Ratner's sound guy. I had a lot of the $100 Million Club on my,
Yeah.
set. And so Quentin was like, well, why don't you take my camera and you can shoot it on my camera? So yeah, he offered it to me.
Wow. I'm like, wait, do you call him and ask him, can you borrow it? Like, how does that work? Do you have your agent call him? Like, I just didn't know. Wow. I know that was like so petty, but I'm like, I needed to know. Like,
No, but I think it's a great story. I mean, it's the one way that he put his money where his mouth was about wanting me to learn how to direct.
Yeah. And honestly, like just based on what I've heard about him, he's very direct.
Oh yeah.
But everything's like a teaching moment.
Oh yeah, no, he loves that is the consummate storyteller. Quentin can turn getting a parking ticket into the most amazing story you ever heard. He is an amazing storyteller and he loves to tell stories. And so it doesn't matter whether he is introducing some movie he wants to show you from 1947 or whether he is, it doesn't matter what the scenario is. He's going to give you the backstory. He's going to give you the history. And he knows everything and he never forgets anything.
I believe it. Well, a couple of times, like I was telling you earlier, I said Jamie Foxx was talking about him, and he's like, you know what? He said, I guess on the set it was like uncomfortable. You're talking about a slave movie,
Oh yeah,
yeah. He's like, you guys are pulling up in your fancy cars. Look, you're in a slave movie, okay? Right. This is what you're supposed to do. Take off the fancy glasses. Like this is what it is. Right. And it was so funny the way, because both of them to me, I don't know if they're like the same level type, but when he's telling this story, I'm like, I can see him saying that. Like,
now I will tell you, whenever you're on a set with Quentin, I don't care how alpha the alpha males are. Quentin is the ultimate alpha.
You didn't have to even tell me. You know why? And the reason why I say that is because it's almost like when he spoke, everyone kind of like, I don't want to say it's like kid-like.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a problem, right? You can disagree with him. You know what he said to me one time? And this is the bottom line. You can argue with success, but you'll be wrong.
Wow.
So yeah, go ahead and argue with him. But he's the one with the Oscars. He probably knows what he's talking about, Yeah. So, and Jamie has an Oscar, but for acting. He doesn't have an Oscar for filmmaking. So Quentin is the expert in filmmaking.
Yeah. He said, he's like, I just sat down. He said, I will work with him 1,000 times. He said, every time we work together, I learn a lot.
Oh yeah, no, he is a remarkable person, and working with him is a privilege. Being friends with him is a privilege. Just being around him is a privilege, because if you care if you're at all fascinated by American pop culture, history, television, movies, games, books, toys, whatever, of the last 100 years, he's the guy. He knows the entire history of television, the entire history of film. He knows the history of board games. He knows the history. I mean, it's ridiculous, this stuff. He knows history of history as well, because he learns it from the movies. Like, he doesn't make a World War II movie and not know about World War II.
Yeah, you could tell. Like, you could tell. Yeah. I wouldn't even want to have a conversation really with him, because I just go home and want to research it, because I wouldn't even have to.
No, and we knew, all of us that came up with him, we knew him when you couldn't, just pick up your phone and be like, oh, let me Google that or whatever. When we're hanging out with him, when there's no phones, no Googles, no nothing, we're just talking. And he is this encyclopedia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what is that like on the set? So you're of course on a slave movie. Like, how is that on the set? It's almost like when you watch these things, it's hard,
Well, yeah, and in some ways it's harder to watch than to do, because when we're doing it 1,000 times. We're breaking for lunch and eating modern food, and we some people are checking their phones at lunch, and we have toilets, air conditioning. There's things that we have that make you comfortable, literally comfortable, that you are no longer in that environment. That nobody has to fight for their freedom. Nobody's going to be whipping anybody. Nobody's going, like, it's a movie. So part of that illusion is helpful for everybody to get along and everybody to deal with all the stuff they're bringing to the table to get these parts to be accurate. Most of us that were hired for all the Candyland stuff are local. We are Southern. Quentin wanted that. He wanted actual Southerners playing the Southerners. And so for the most part, we are. Like, obviously, Leonardo DiCaprio is not a Southerner, but most of us were. And neither is Sam Jackson, but most of us were.
Right, yeah.
But because of that, we shared our heritages with each other. Like, I had a lot of the same downtime as the people playing the house slaves. And we had a lot of downtime because you're shooting forever. We shot for 5 months here in New Orleans. So
in that heat.
Well, we're used to it. But a lot of us were using our own family history. And so for the people playing the house slaves, they're using the history of their own family's slavery to fill in these roles, stories that they've heard their whole lives growing up. And some of them have called their grandparents or aunts and uncles and said, tell me stories. Some of them looked up stuff. I did too. Wow. So I've always known, my mother told me very young that we were children of slave owners. She thought I should have that information. And, I came up in the civil rights era. So, that was something that we talked about, and that she thought I should have that information, that though it was when we lived in that commune, it was a house that was part of the Underground Railroad.
Really?
And yeah, so that was one reason that we talked about it. And so anyway, there were a lot of reasons to talk about it. Roots was on TV. Cecily Tyson's Harriet Tubman portrayal.
Yeah.
There was a lot of reasons to talk about this stuff in my home. So, because we came up in that era where it was a topic. So, yeah, so I feel like that talking about our family's histories was really important for us as actors, but I think it was also really important to set harmony, to getting along in relationship with everybody, so that we're openly discussing this thing that we're making.
Yeah.
And the fact that people are walking around all day using the N-word and stuff, there's some of this that's really, really ugly. Django is a lot of fun. It's very romantic. It's got, there's a lot to Django. There's a lot of ways to look at it, but it's also brutal. Yeah. And all they're doing is just putting the camera on what was, and it's brutal. So, yeah. So, if this fun, romantic, sometimes comedy, sometimes dramedy, sometimes straight up drama, sometimes action movie, is accurate, the place where it's most accurate, it's mostly not, it's mostly a movie, but the place where it's most accurate is about the treatment of the slaves. And if you'll notice the way the film is, the way he films the violence that's between white folks or between, good guys and bad guys and whatever, is very cartoony, very over the top, very like big, operatic violence that's for the cinema. When he films the stuff of like whipping the slave type stuff, it's just straight up film. Yeah. There's no style to it. There's no, it's just showing what it is.
Yeah. He did a great job. It was, so I had to laugh a little because as I watched the movie, I'm like, wait a minute. They didn't have sunglasses back then, did they?
Oh yeah, they did. They did. And they would have been either the type that you affix. You wouldn't have had a separate pair of sunglasses, but if you had glasses, you would have the type that you would affix. Yeah, I don't know if they had actual sunglasses yet, but I do know they had those shade things.
Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute.
But it doesn't even matter. Quentin doesn't care about all that. And they didn't have rap music, and we had rap music.
Sure did. I thought it was a great thing, but that's why I wanted to talk about the relationship on and off, because he stressed the fact that Leonardo had such a hard time with that. And he's like, look, you're in a slave movie. Get over it. Okay?
Yeah.
Get over it. This is what we're doing. This is the time. And we're going to move on. And I started.
Well, no, it is hard though. And especially, you know, like Leo was also raised sort of in a more, you know, like a holistic type family where there's this belief that we are all connected and we're all family and you don't have to be related to, yeah. So he was raised similar to me in that sort of like peace, love, and happiness kind of vibe. And so I don't know if that movie is the first time that he had to use the N-word, but I do know that it was the first time that I ever had to say the N-word. And you know, I've seen comics talk about how, you know, they have white friends who are like just dying to say that word. Can't I say? I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, that's a very different experience of that word for me. And so I was really pleased because when I got the script, my character didn't say that word. And so that those 8 months that I was preparing the role, I figured that Quentin was trying to show that she's a little different, that she's the lace amongst all this leather.
Yeah, you know, you're right. Well, I mean, of course you're right, but I didn't notice that.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. My first day of filming, I walk in and he's so excited. He's like, Laura, I wrote you this whole big speech now. I added this whole huge speech to your scene. And first of all, I'm panicking because like I had the script for 8 months and now you wait till today to give me this giant speech that I'm going to give. So he's like all excited. You got this whole big speech you're going to do today. So I look at it and the N-word's in it. And I said, oh, Quentin, just so you know, my character doesn't say that word. You know that, right? Like you noticed that you didn't ever have her say that word. And he's like, yes, she does. And I said, no, but like, I thought you wanted her to be sort of like, you know, different in that. He's like, no, she's not different. She's just the same as all the other white folks. She doesn't know better. She says the same. And she says it like sack of potato. She doesn't know the difference between that word and the word sack of potato. So, you know, you have to get comfortable with that word. Like it doesn't mean anything to you.
Wow. I didn't know. I didn't even think about it.
And I said, well, okay. So he's like, all right, well, now say it. Just say it. And I'm like, now? And he's like, say it. So I said it. And he goes, oh, pitiful, pitiful. Say it again. So I said it again. He's like, nope. Say it again. And so I say it again. Now, anybody walking by my trailer right now is only hearing me go inward, and Quentin going, no, say it again. Say it again. But, you know, finally he was like, okay, good enough. Work on it. I'll see you in a couple hours.
We're going to move past it. Just go.
Yeah. So, you know, Leo and I never talked about that, but I did hear that he was having the same struggle of like, and he had to say it like 1,000 times. Oh my God, he had to say it over and over and over. So, you know, I probably shouldn't tell these stories, but his entourage were, you know, he had 2 assistants with him. They were his like best friends since elementary school. They weren't white.
I heard that like he is really like, I want to say a melting pot, you know, like they said that he, and in my mind, I'm thinking like Leonardo probably had to go to counseling for that. Like it was,
I think so.
Hard. It was like, you know, these are things that, you know, to be honest with you, I love talking about it because we don't get to see or hear about all the behind the scenes things. And that's why I was asking about the relationship part because, you know, like that's the time frame, you know, it is. And
well, it's weird. It is a weird thing to like be sitting at a table saying inward stuff at each other and then go sit at our table as actors and have lunch.
You know,
together.
Yeah, it's weird.
Right? And the yes.
I'm sorry, but it's funny because you're right. It's like, but well, let me ask you, because I thought that some actors, they're always in costume, like they're always in character too. So
There
Well,
are some people who do that. They're very few. I know that people think that that's what the method is. That is not what the method is. And there are very few people who do that. I know off the top of my head, Sean Penn, I think, is one. Jim Carrey is another. But by and large, most
really?
people do not make you call them the character's name, and they don't. No, the only and those costumes are extremely expensive and irreplaceable. So no, it's not good to stay in your costume. Like my hoop skirts and everything from the waist down on all of my costumes was detachable, so that I could go to lunch wearing my costume from the waist up and tuck napkins in it or put a tablecloth over me. But I didn't have to worry about those miles and miles of fabric that I mean, how are people going to not, how would I even sit at the table?
Right.
I
And
would
I
take
was
up
thinking,
4 spaces.
yeah, I was thinking like, what if he got to pee?
Exactly. And here's something I told you that I knew about my family's heritage with the slave owning my whole life, but not until I am in hoop skirts do I finally find out for myself, oh, your relationship with your slave who's your dresser includes peeing and pooping.
Wait, what do you mean?
Because how in the world, like I can tell you how I got to go to the bathroom, and it did require 2 people to make it happen. You couldn't
Uh-huh.
just like, "Oh, I gotta pee now," and then go to the portalette in a hoop skirt. That's not gonna work. You can't even close the door. So I had to have somebody come with me every time that I went to the bathroom, and they would have to take all my hoop skirts off, and it's layers and layers and layers of skirting, and it would take off like 40 pounds of stuff, and then I would go tinkle, and then we get back all of it back on me. But
Wow.
in the olden days, they would have had to lift all that, and they would have had, but even to get dressed or get in the outhouse or any of that stuff, you would have needed a slave's help.
I didn't think about that. It's first of all, you're in the South wearing all of that. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm sorry, but I didn't even think about the hygiene. I'm like, isn't that crab hot?
Oh yeah. No, it's definitely warm. I will say that when I was wearing the petticoats, those were super hot. When I was wearing the hoop skirt, um the advantage to the hoop over the petticoats is that the hoop I could do this and get air up under there.
Oh, good.
And I
I'm
was
like,
wearing shorts under there. I had to wear they were like wool tights and boots and all that, but and pantaloons and all. But under all that, I had just regular shorts. And so I could just do this whether I was in just the shorts or whether I had the bloomers and the whole, it didn't matter. I could still lift my skirt and get some air under there. But
oh
the
my
women back then
God,
couldn't.
like the hats and all. I'm like, didn't they have like short sleeve shirts or something? That stuff
Yeah.
seemed extremely hot. I'm like, but I didn't even think about that. Like, I didn't even think that.
I didn't either until I always understood that you needed help dressing because the
Yeah,
corsets all, they all
yeah,
center
yeah,
on the back.
yeah.
So I understood that. I understood. I dance in a dance troupe where we all wear corsets, and so I know what it takes to get a corset on. But
Oh my gosh.
I
I
didn't
even forgot about that.
understand the peeing and the pooping thing and periods and all that stuff. I didn't understand about, normal bodily functions. How do you make that work in a hoop skirt if you're my great, 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 great whoever?
I'm sorry, but I didn't even think about that until you just mentioned it. I thought about the peeing part, but I'm like, okay, they just go because they never showed that in movies. They never
Yep.
talk about it. And I'm like, it's like 100 degrees down there, like 100 plus. Come on, are you serious? I didn't think, okay, but let me just ask you. I know this is very private and personal, but what about like women who had to like breastfeed? Their slaves would do that because
Well, there
that's
were there were slaves who did do that, but I'm not going to speak for all white people
yeah,
who own slaves because I don't
we're
know.
not
I
this
don't even
general.
know my own white people that own slaves. I don't even know. I don't know one human who owns slaves.
Right.
Um, but I I do know heritage wise, story wise, whatever. Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the whole concept of slavery is so foreign that um And I don't mean the concept of oppression. Oppression we live with today. I don't mean the concept of racism. We live with that today. But the idea of owning a person outright, that's so weird.
Right.
And yeah. And so of course we don't think about it, because why would you even let your mind rest there? You know, like, it's
Yeah.
a lot to think about when you let yourself think about it. And all of us who did that movie had no choice but to go there.
Yeah. I mean, because you're right. I mean, it was a great movie now. I mean, let's talk about that. But I want to talk about, since that's a good segue into uh when you talk about the concept of owning a human. So we were talking about the black and white, white person, black person. So please tell me, because that brings into your, of course, your human side, your empathetic side, your compassionate side, your literary side, and your acting side. So what do you call that?
What do I call what?
I'm sorry. Remember we were talking about earlier? You said, I'm going to bring up that
Oh, I
term,
called it post-racial.
post-racial.
It was an attempt. When I was writing my mystery series, I made an attempt. I always try and challenge myself as an author to do one new thing, push literature into one new area every time I write. And so with my mystery series, the thing I tried to do was to write post-racially. And I'm sure that's a terrible term, but that is the best I could come up with. So what happened was, a friend of mine who I've known since high school, she had a kid. And when her child was like 3.5, she's now a teenager, but when she was 3.5, she was in the living room with the TV on, which was unusual because my friend didn't usually leave her kid in the room with the TV. And she had left it on some, the reason she had left her in there is because she was watching some kids movie, and she was like, well, I'll just let her do that while I go do kitchen stuff. And so she's in the kitchen doing stuff. And then at some point she hears yelling, and she's like, well, why is there so much yelling from the TV? She goes over, and the color purple is on.
I'm sorry.
And it's the scene where the white lady is going black, 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 black. And Julia, who is, yeah, and she is raised entirely multiculturally, says, Mama, why does that lady keep saying black? She keeps saying black, black, black. I don't see anything black she's pointing at. And it hit us that she had never heard a human called black.
Oh.
And when you think about it, like, I have black friends who are lighter skinned than I am. So why would Julia know that black means skin, when really, honestly, very few black folks have skin that we would describe as any color of black? Most people who we call black are not black, just like I don't know white people who are, this is the color white. If I'm an author and I say a white person, have I done a good job describing the skin tone of the human by calling them white? No, I've done a terrible job. If I call a human black, have I done a good job of describing the person? No. So I challenged myself to never be the reason that Julia would find out that we call people colors, and to write in a way that never gets lazy about identifying people as colors they're not even. That's not I am not a white person any more than you are a black person. So it's not just that it's it's lazy from a literature standpoint.
Wow.
It's lazy because it doesn't tell you anything about the person.
I didn't even think about it. Even my daughter told me, she's like, Mom, there's no such thing as black people. Black is a shade.
Yes.
Or something she said like that, right? I'm like, wow. But you're right. But let me, Laura,
I'm not all white. Are you all black? I'm not all white.
Yeah, well, I tell you, I have family. We're all colors of the rainbow.
Right.
We do have people.
We're American.
That they'll say they're black. Not they will say, but people say they're black, but they're your complexion, blonde. blonde hair, blue eyes, green eyes. And I'm like, yeah, that's my cousin. What? We're blood cousins.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. But I want to say thank you so very much for coming on and, just explain all that, because I'm not, it's probably not that easy to do that,
No. Oh, and then when I got to book 3, it's a series of 5 books. And there's lots of folks who are Black and then lots of folks that are white. And I never say, I describe them in different ways. And some people I describe very little of, like there's a character named Tina that we just know that she wears a baseball cap with her hair pulled through the back, like a ponytail pulled through the back of the baseball cap. White people think Tina is white. Black people think Tina is Black. And I don't care.
It's whatever.
Tina. It doesn't matter to me which way you see her. Because all I gave you was the hair pulled through the hat. So whatever you're comfortable with, that's it. So, but in book three, in each of the books, I take you behind the scenes of some part of acting, like a commercial shoot or an audition or, something. But in book 3, you actually go on, the mystery takes place a lot to do with the work she's doing. And so she is working every day on this movie that's inspired, it's sort of capturing some of what it's like to work like on a Tarantino set. And so in that one, the name of the movie that she's in is called Seven Sisters. And Seven Sisters, there's 3 white sisters, 3 Black sisters, and 1 Asian sister.
Wow.
And I'm like, now I have really done it. Because now
I love it.
Of Seven Sisters is that there's 3 white, 3 Black, and 1 Asian. And I can't use the words Black, white, and Asian to describe them because that's lazy.
Yeah, I love it. I really do. I want to brag on you a little bit, because I want to tell them to please go and grab your books. I'm going to post all of this. You're going to definitely see the books. She and I were talking about it earlier. I'm buying all of them. I did tell her, I said, I know people have Kindles and all of that, but I actually like the paperback. I like to actually read the book.
Well, then you'll have to come to New Orleans so I can sign them.
It's, that is very easy for me to do, because I told you my family's from Alabama and my mother goes down there at least 3 or 4 times a year. So trust me, we're going to definitely hook up. I want to go to the French Quarters. Now, I will say one thing. I mean, the gumbo and all that is phenomenal, but it's too darn spicy for me. But it's good. It's good. I want to eat like the crawfish, like all that. So we're like sisters.
Yeah, I can't taste what you're tasting. The spice? No, I don't taste what you're tasting. I actually have a funny behind the scenes story about Friends. I was doing the TV show Friends. And they always leave what they call craft services. It's like snacks for the cast and crew to make sure that their energy level stays up. And so there's always something that's protein. There's always something that's sugar. There's different ways to get a quick energy boost. So one of the days they were serving chicken wings, barbecue chicken wings. So I go over and I'm at the table, I'm seeing what there is. And I look at the wings and I say to the person next to me, I said, "Are these wings hot?" And they said, I don't know. And I said, are they like spicy or are they, and so they said, I don't know. I didn't taste them. So I'm like, okay. So I go and eat one and I'm like, nah, they don't have no spice on them. They're warm, like they're hot out of the oven, but they don't got no spice. And so, so this woman comes over, one of the producers, one of my bosses comes over and says, "Are these wings spicy?" And I say, "No." I mean, do you mean hot or hot like temperature or hot like hot on your tongue? And she's like, "Spicy. Like, are they spicy?" I said, "No, they're not hot like that. No, they're warm to touch, but they're not hot like spicy." Am I allowed to cuss?
Yeah.
She takes one bite and goes, "You bitch." And I'm like, what? And she walks away. David Schwimmer comes up and he's one of the actors, and he comes up and he plays Ross and he says, "Hey, Laura, are those wings hot?" And I said, "Do you mean hot temperature or hot spicy?" And he goes, hot, spicy? And I said, I don't know. I don't know. I thought they weren't. I thought they had no spice at all on them, but now I've got one of the bosses calling me bitch, and I don't know what happened. So he tries one and he goes, you can't taste the spice on this? And I was like, no. So I love spice because I guess I'm not tasting what you're tasting.
Yeah, that's why I said, I was like, it's too spicy for us. But for you, it's like, no, even my mother, she's like, no, a lot of stuff, I don't taste it. I'm like, well, but I will say, she's like, it's good for your digestive system.
Oh, yeah, no. And cayenne stops, what's that thing? Oh, God, what is it called when you, it's shingles. Shingles. Yeah, if you eat a lot of cayenne, you don't get shingles.
I bet you don't. It'd probably kill them. Like, no. Wow. Yes, we're getting the book, but I want to say thank you so very much for taking the time to talk to us. This has been a blast. You know, we're going to see each other every week or whatever it is. You know, and Laura is, beside being a critically acclaimed actor, because you know I love that word, and an author, and just a great person, she also coaches acting. She's going to be helping my daughter because, you know, she's like making up her own scenes as she goes. So if any of you,
maybe we can do another podcast in the future and have your daughter come on and talk. But yeah, that's I really love coaching, and I especially enjoy private coaching, and I you know, I coach actors, but I also coach authors and filmmakers, and I really enjoy it. I'm a third generation teacher. I love teaching, and I don't do it for a career, so it's nice when I get to do it. You know, it makes me feel not just part of a community of people who I'm helping, you know, pay forward and all that, but it also helps me to feel like part of my own family heritage, you know. But I do feel, I don't have children, so for me, teaching is the only way I get to pay forward everything that's been taught to me. And I've had, you know, so many amazing mentors. I mean, you know, Quentin and Richard Dreyfuss and Kevin Costner.
You can't get better than that. Yeah. You can't. I mean,
and I am passing forward their wisdom.
Yeah, you can't get, I told her, I'm like, look, I wouldn't care if she said you need to be on this computer or whatever at 2 a.m. You better be here. I don't care if it's 6 a.m. You better.
I'm a night owl, but I write at night. I don't coach at night.
Yeah. I'm like, you better be out here because this was God. You can't get better than this. Like, you need to be here, prepared, and on time. That's the first thing I asked you. What does she need to do to prepare?
Yeah.
You got to be prepared. You have to be.
Well, my whole career comes from that, and it's also my philosophy on writing is, you know, the 3-step prep is how I get my writing done, and being overly prepared is how I book my jobs as an actor, and it's also how I do the work I do once I get the job. So yeah, if we had to name a theme, be prepared.
Be prepared. I told her. Remember, that was the first thing I said. I was like, okay, what does she have to do to prepare? Like, yeah. No, you have to be prepared always. You know, I said, you're not going to waste her time because she does not need you. You need her. So be prepared. Yes. But thank you. This has been like a blast. Like, we're like friends because we're Southerners and everything. You're going to be seeing me every week. I love it. So,
well, and I like to think that I know that there are like t-shirts and whatever that I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. I like to think that you obviously are probably your ancestors' wildest dreams come true, but I like to think that my own family, that one of the nice moments in my family history is that the woman who I come from left all that money, left the plantation, left everything for love. She married the overseer, and her father disinherited her, and so I like to think that I'm her wildest dream too, of that I live in a world where, you know, there isn't any slavery and there isn't any, you know, like.
That's a whole other episode. Now we have to talk about that too. Go figure.
Yeah. Now her dad, I don't live in his dream world. His dream world was that you would be my slave now. That was his dream world. And I'm related to that guy too. So, you know, it's all messy.
Yeah.
But I like to cling to the idea that I am descended from the woman who left all that, and so we have no money, but we have, this value of choose love.
Yeah, wow, wow. Oh my God, I love it. I love it. Thank you so very much. This has been a blast. I'm going to get in contact with you for my daughter, but I just want to say thank you for coming on and gracing us with your presence, your knowledge.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I felt like this was, I can tell you're a storyteller because you really took us from the beginning to the end. I love it. We can actually picture ourselves. I don't want to picture myself in the heat because I know how that heat is down there and it's different. It's layers to it.
It's wet.
Yes, it is. Yes. So thank you so very much, and I will be in touch. And thank you everyone for watching. Oh my God, this has been a blast. But thank you, Laura, and I will definitely get in contact with you as we talked about earlier.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. You take care. Love it. Thank you.